And there we are, Wednesday, March the 9th at 3 p.m. Eastern. We're again here. I'm Dave Williams, your host from findyournewnormal.com. Really glad you've come to join us today. It's been an interesting year or so of doing live broadcasting on this concept of how to cope with cancer along the journey that you begin from diagnosis all the way through the treatment process into a recovery post-treatment area and then into vitality and wellness. And every week on Wednesdays, we're casually talking about all the different issues that people face to cope with this very strange and meandering journey. And we try to bring on interesting guests and provide resources and so forth to help you focus in on what to deal with. A lot of those replays and resources and our directory of coaches you'll find all on findyournewnormal.com. So once again, I'm glad you're here, and I'm super glad because I have my wonderful co-host, Gina Costa-Brava, who's here every week with Costa Brava. No, you see, there's something I wish I knew. Costa Goldfarb. And
I thought you were giving me
that's right. Well, I was thinking how bravo, and then I sort of went. My mind is all over it. Folks, we've had nothing but surprises today, from power outages, to lighting outages, sound outages. I'm still trying to figure out where I'm supposed to be in these table lamps I've now set up. It's been a very strange set of circumstances, but so appropriate to the surprises of cancer. So as I was saying, I'm always glad to have at my side a cancer coach and cancer survivor, Gina Costa-Goldfarb. Say hello to all our friends,
hello.
Gina.
Bravo. Yes, so good to be
give you props. That's right. Props to
alongside of you today. Thank you.
Right.
So I am the owner and founder of New Beginnings Coaching Services, LLC, and I basically help survivors through their journey. So much emotional and physical challenges to go through. And I'm all about recreating or creating new beginnings. I've had so many life experiences, and basically turning negative life events into positive ones. So where can we take our cancer journey? So sometimes it can be the best thing that happens to us because it causes us to step back and reassess our lives. And, yes, it's about the cancer and about the treatment and everything that we're going through. But, so in coaching my clients, how can you make these new applications to your lifestyle? And, so basically, how do you show up every day? How you do anything is how you're going to do everything. So that's what I love, getting my clients through cancer and onto new.
And people should follow you on Facebook because you share a lot of that wisdom. You write prolifically. I mean, I don't know. To me, you must be up at 3:00 every morning writing articles because then there you are, and I'll go to a cancer site and there's something you've written. You're people, you should follow Gina. She's really got a lot of experience as a coach and as a cancer survivor. She walks her talk, and that's why it's fun to have Gina here every week. I'm interested in today's show because it's colon cancer month. As I said last week, it's also Kidney Awareness Month, but this is the big colon awareness boost where everyone should be aware of it. And as a colon cancer survivor, I reflect now a few years ago, and this week I was right in hospital and starting my diagnosis and trying to understand what the heck cancer was all about. And I thought today would be interesting to talk about the journey that I've had and that Gina's had, and some of you who are out there have had, that surprised you. Not everything in my journey just went along step by step. There were so many occasions where I was, sort of what I think blindsided, not from the medical side, but what comes with having a a treatment program that is unpredictable and has many different components to it. And with cancer, I had a couple of memories that just jumped out at me. And the topic came a couple of weeks ago when we're lucky here in Canada that we have the Canadian Cancer Society picks up cancer survivors and drives them to their cancer clinic appointments. And so what's fun for me is I get in the car with 3 or 4 other people, and we get to meet each other, and they're always different. Every week you go, you get to see a different group of people being transported. And we were talking about the surprises, things that you weren't expecting to have happen. We all knew about the medical side of things. We knew of the serious implications of radiation and chemo and the surgery and the recovery, but there were little twists. And the one that came to my mind is when the surgery was, well, in fact, I had a number of surgeries. So to keep it in perspective, at a couple of times I've been having to change or have different kinds of ostomy appliances to deal with my recovery and dealing with bodily waste excretion. And so you are told you're going to have what they call the bag attached to your abdomen to either deal with urine or stool waste. And so you say, okay, that's great. And so you do all that, and they teach you what that's all about and how to handle it. But no one prepared me for the fact that my clothes didn't fit anymore. And that really caught me off guard. To everyone else who's dealing with it from the medical profession, the nurses and so forth, well, they just know, they've been at it for a gazillion patients. But for me, suddenly it's time. I was trying to get some day passes because I was hospital bound, and I said, I want to go home. So they said, okay, you could have a day pass. And I tried to put on my trousers, and they didn't fit. And over the appliances because of where they placed the bags on my abdomen. And it was a big dilemma. What am I supposed to do? And you ask everyone, and they said, oh, well, don't button up. And I said, well, I got to have my pants fit. I can't have them dropping down. Oh, well, have your family get you a bigger set. Maybe some sweatpants that cover everything. And, so suddenly up to your middle torso, you look like a clown with these things trying to cover over the appliances. Oh, we'll get some suspenders to put over and hold up pants that are loose so they're not constricting the flow of your waste material. And it went on and on and on. And it became quite a frustration because I wanted to go home and I wasn't being able to do it other than to go home in my pajamas. And so on the first day, I did go home on my pajamas. And that was very uncomfortable. And I brought back some oversized clothing, and I felt like a clown in that. And it took over a month of asking everybody, what kinds of clothes do you wear? Until on the midnight shift, I was talking to a nurse about his scrubs that he was wearing. And I looked at them and I said, those are kind of attractive scrubs for a man's scrub. I mean, all of you who have been in hospital know what women's scrubs look like. Very attractive, very petite, very feminine. But a guy's look was quite different. And I looked at it and said, are those scrubs? They look like dress pants. He said, oh, sure, blah, blah, blah. And suddenly the light went on. Why don't I wear scrubs? Because the scrubs actually had the elastic band. They also had a tie waist that I could tie tightly or loosely. It had all the pockets. Some of them had seams in it, so they looked like trousers. It was sort of, the light went on at 2:00 in the morning. I've got to get some scrubs. And sure enough, I had a family member, my son, bring in a pair of scrubs, and they were just absolutely perfect. But it was something as simple as, what am I going to wear, that no one had a prepared answer for, or the prepared answers that they had were totally ridiculous for me. Maybe for other people, you can go around wearing your pajamas all the time or oversized pants, look like a clown. But I just couldn't see that at all acceptable until I found something really practical. And they were like $22. Normal trousers were $40 to $50. So here were professionally looking trousers for $20. And I'm still wearing them. In fact, today, I wore them today because these are the same ones I had 3 years ago. And they still work. They still fit. They're still perfect. So I got the best $20 I could ever have. And all of that inconvenience, anxiety, worry about what am I going to wear, I now just give that piece of advice to all of you colon cancer survivors out there. Go look at scrubs. You're going to be surprised. Male or female scrubs, they're going to cover your appliances. They're going to fit perfectly. They're inexpensive, and they look really great. So there's my first piece of tips and advice today. What do you think of that, Gina?
Oh, my God. So relatable. You brought back so many memories from me, in different body parts. And, I had a lot of experience with cancer, but, same thing for me. So I had a double mastectomy. And, so fortunately, I had some help there, and, I knew what my sister had gone through. And fortunately, my doctors prepared me for when I came home, because when you come home from a double mastectomy, you have drains, you have all these drains coming out of you, and you lose your range of motion. So you can't even lift your arms over your shoulders. So what do? And the best piece of advice, now I'm a coach, right? So when I'm working with my clients, it's about helping them find all of their own answers. But obviously, if I have someone who's going through surgery or getting ready to surgery, I'll say, hey, did your doctors or nurses mention to you that you should get, after your surgery, button-down PJs? So, and like you said, loose fitting button-down PJs, because you can't take anything over your head. And you have all these appliances and drains and bags that you have to measure and mix and all this stuff when you come home.
Sure.
So button-down PJs, is really a thing for someone to. And you mentioned that stress, Steve. So if you don't know that stuff, it's like the stress. Oh my God, how am I going to get out to the store to get a pair of button-down PJs? Whoever knew I would have needed a pair of button-down PJs, and not to mention all the different bras. After that, going through all the different procedures. So a larger sports bra for one part of the, journey after getting rid of the drains or the bras that the hospital gives you, then moving on to sports bras. Then when you get your reconstruction and you're ready to go back to work and you put all your blouses on, you get your pants on, and then you realize that you can't button any of your favorite blouses. So you're like, well, what do I do now? This isn't the right size. So there's just so much unknown. And what size am I going to, it's going to fit me now. Quite honestly, and women do this all the time. For the first time, when I was 46 years old, I walked into Victoria's Secret and said, can you measure me? I have no idea what size I am now for a bra. I mean, it's crazy, the things that you go through. So that's one of the things, some helpful hints that I like to give to my clients, just in terms of how to be prepared so that you're not stressed and, put on the spot, because the last thing that we need in our lives is stress. And, I'll bounce back to you, but, one of the other things that I learned, not only, in terms of physical, but how to communicate with others was a big deal for me, because I got into a lot of misunderstanding and miscommunication, because I was in such a state and I wanted to protect myself, that others didn't understand what was going on for me. So that's a huge thing too, to promote some awareness around to our listeners, I think.
Well, it struck me as odd, because I had never been involved with hospitals or medicine or the system, as they call it. And, I was certainly pleased that I had great oncologists with lots of specialization and caring nurses looking after me. But the basics, the simple things, are taken so much for granted by them that they don't seem to pass them on. And when I was talking to the other passengers in the car and over the last couple of weeks talking to other people in the waiting rooms during my clinic appointments, it's clear that the basics are ignored. We're just sort of, well, of course you'll figure that out. And to them, it was no big deal. Like to them, what I was going to wear was no big deal. I mean, hey, we saved your life. You're into the treatment program. What do you care? And yet it's those things that you've lost your sense of identity. You've lost your sense of control. You've lost your sense of independence. And now the only thing left is some of the things like, what am I going to wear? I can take some control of. And now you can't do that either because you don't understand.
And you know what, Dave? That just amazes me. Now, I was fortunate to be treated in one of the biggest hospitals in New York City. And so I got a lot of that information from the support staff. Plus, I had the knowledge behind me. But it just floors me, when I talk to other people, friends who are diagnosed with cancer or my clients, the information that is not given to them. And, it should be standard across the board. I mean, I was given every instruction and given every pamphlet to prepare, luckily. But some, like you said, some hospitals just don't do that. They're so focused on the medical, and possibly they don't have the support staff to provide that information.
Yeah. I mean, they can't spend orientation time, but I had suggested to them, why isn't there, a customer service agent, somebody whose job is to inform patients of the basics, just like in a hotel, when you get there, there's a guidebook that says, here's where our restaurant is, the swimming pool, the ice machine. So, okay, why can't the marketing department in the hospital have a guidebook that's there for the patient? Because when I came in, I went in through emergency and I was in isolation for over a week. And so they then said, oh, I'm going to move you out of isolation and we're going to put you on the floor. Well, I didn't know what they were talking about. On the floor, I thought, does that mean I'm going to lose my bed? You're going to put me on the floor? But no, they were talking obviously of the ward. And I said, well, what's the ward? And well, you're going to have, rooms and just like this one, but there'll be other people. And they tried to explain. So, well, haven't you got a picture of it? Can't you show me where you're going to take me? And they said, well, and they came back and said, what do you think? This is a hotel? I said, how difficult would it have been to say, okay, here's our treatment ward. Here's how it's laid out. This is where your bed is, where the window is. To try and alleviate some of the very strange discomfort that people are going to have when they are coming in under stress and anxiety over the medical condition, but have absolutely no clue. And maybe it's because I'm looking at this through a newbie's eyes. Other than visiting a maternity ward, I had no sense of what a hospital was like. So the fact that I would be in a room, and as it turned out, in my treatment program of months and months and months, I was in many different floors and in 2 to 3 different hospitals in different configurations, and they were all different. And each one I had to acclimatize to how to move around. Some were not even equipped properly for the people that they had in it. So to orient, a patient orientation, or in business, we call it an onboarding process, to get that new employee comfortable of, there's your desk, there's your phone, there's the photocopier. Why can't that be done to alleviate some of these basic orientation issues that the patient's going to have?
Yeah, so I'm curious because if you had the opportunity to have this. So they actually provided classes for us in the hospital after surgery, that we could take, one for emotional support, and also to get prepared on how to take care of the drain. So I'm just wondering if you had any access to that. See,
no
I think
formalized
again,
education.
you're either fortunate or you're not fortunate, depending on the facility.
Boy, there's a piece of advice for everyone watching. You can't expect the same level of service in every place that you go. You had someone who was trying to educate you. Me, they just left you alone and just said, hey, we'll treat your medical condition, but the rest is up to you. So isn't that interesting?
Yeah, And you know what? This is why I always tell people, and I don't tell people, exactly where to go, but you want to be treated. Wow.
I've told
Go
people
to the
where
go to the best go to the best place first, and so I went to one of the best, and I was fortunate to get these services. I mean, they even had a library where you could just kind of go in and lounge and relax, and they actually, again, I was very fortunate. So they did make it as comfortable as possible, and they did give education around it.
Wow.
So, I think that's so key, and like a menu of classes, whatever you wanted.
Now, do you get to choose which hospital and clinic you could go to, so you could shop around and find the best hotel to stay in? I mean, or you just go to whatever's available?
Yeah. Obviously, and at the time I had, medical coverage that covered, the best hospital. Now I'm an entrepreneur paying for my own medical, and it's a little bit different. I'm trying to fill high deductibles this year.
But you're allowed just under your policies to choose a hospital of your choice?
Well, yeah, as long as it's covered, or, then you have obviously, you have the choice if you want to go to somewhere that's not covered. But
so you could choose one that had an educational program. If you asked for that in your decision process, you could choose one hospital over another.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had no idea what I was getting into, if they were going to have these classes or not. But again, I was fortunate. So at least I'm able, to pass that on to other, other people. See,
that's interesting. We up here in Canada, within driving distance, I've got 3 major cancer clinics and hospital centers that would provide excellent treatment. But I don't get a choice because I'm on the waiting list. So you then get the next spot that's available as quickly as possible. You can't just say, well, sorry, I don't like your service, I'll go down to the street. But they're all equals in terms of medical treatment. I've been asking people how the different hospitals are changing, and are they putting orientation programs and so forth in, because that's what surprised me, is that there wasn't any, it's not, the psychosocial, anxiety, stress related issues are covered. There are people who will do that, but the plain things that we're talking about, are just taken for granted and are not there unless you've got a special educational program like you were talking, where you could bring that up. I think that's just an excellent idea. Yeah. When you were in hospital, did you have a choice of how they inserted IVs into your arm, where they positioned them, which arms to choose?
Well, I think that, yes, but I think that's also dependent on whether or not you have chemotherapy and, what arms to choose and things like that. I don't know if that's the question.
I'm just curious as how much freedom you found in your hospital, because my team, would say that they're the ones in the white coats, they're the experts, and they'll say, "Give me your left arm, we're going to do this. Give me your right arm, we're going to do this." But they don't think of what the impact is of putting a hydration IV into your wrist or up onto your forearm. Or whether you're left-handed or right-handed. And one of the things that I wasn't prepared for was using the washroom on my hospital floor when the IV was attached to my right hand. So for hygienic purposes, my right hand can't be really used. And I'm trying to do what I normally would do in a washroom with my left hand, which was free. And I've never use toilet paper on my left hand. So suddenly,
now that's actually kind of surprising to me that they wouldn't ask or give you choices. But again, that seems like they're totally focused on medical.
Well, actually, it turned out they weren't. They were concerned where the IV pump was going to be beside my bed. Was I on the left or right of the other patient who had an IV pump? So they didn't have the two pumps side by side. So if it had to be on my right side, they wanted the hydration lines on my right arm for positioning of the pump. Not anything to do with me. And now suddenly, well, that made sense. The pump is available for me, not my neighboring patient in the room. But now when I've got to go to the washroom, I'm dragging a pump with this arm, and I can't use this arm for hygiene. I've got to use the other one. And that just took me by total surprise. How fast am I going to learn to use my left hand? I became very ambidextrous in a few days, I'll tell you. It was very strange, very strange. But
and then
I was going to say, it was just one of those things I have on my checklist when I talk to new patients. I say, just tell them you're right-handed, and if at all possible, I put everything on my left arm or whatever your preferred hand is, so that you can have a normal washroom experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing that kind of took me by surprise, which was a little unexpected when I was in the hospital, was I came out of my surgery, and unfortunately I needed an emergency surgery, but my plastic surgeon was off duty. So I think I told this story before. So the covering plastic surgeon came in, and I was like, whoa, where's my guy? I've been with him for so long. And, I think he was totally stressed out, and he was like, I had a hematoma that was just like growing, and, they had to get in there and drain it. And he was like, well, I don't know if we can fix this, but we'll see what we can do. And of course I was traumatized. I'm thinking like, all I want to do is get out of here. Now you're telling me you can't fix me. So needless to say, when he came back to get me into surgery, we kind of had a little bit of exchange of words that wasn't too pleasant. And he actually apologized. I don't even think he was thinking. I think he was just so much under stress and just covering for the other doctors. He didn't even realize what he said. And, then he paused and took a step back and said, no, we're going to take care of this. And I was like, all I want is my own doctor.
Well, you have to, you and I have talked about being your own advocate a number of times on our shows. And, there's such an importance of knowing what's going on around you, because you don't often have your doctor or their team all the time because of rotation. Different people come in, different things happen. And, that's another tip or advice that I'd want to give to people, is for you to pay attention to what it is that is your routine, right down to what medications are you supposed to be taking and when. Because I don't know, well, I gotta make the general we statement. We generally trust the people in the White Coast. They're the ones we've given our life to put in their hands to bring us through it. And so we're trusting that they're doing everything possible on our behalf, and that all these charts that they have and all of the nurses working around it are really, truly, getting involved with your treatment program and paying attention to. I've discovered that sometimes things fall between the cracks, and some people come in because they've had a bad day, a stressful day, and they change over and they're not paying attention to charts. They're not paying attention to the details. And suddenly you find that they're hanging on the pole medication you're not supposed to be taking. And only you can stop that. So if you just sit there and say, oh, sure, whatever's fine, which I see a lot of patients doing constantly, and suddenly you find you have the wrong medication. And that happened 3 times to me over an extended period of time, where what they were about to put into my infusion pump was not the medication that I even required, let alone was different dosage levels. It just was for some other person that they've got it mixed up, and they were hanging it, and I was going to get it. So I got into the habit of always, in a nice way, not being condescending, but saying, what are you giving to me right now? What is it that you're hanging? Is that, tell me again. I want to keep track of what I want to be in charge of the medication program. So it looked like it was for my purposes, but in essence, I wanted to make sure they were doing it right. And because I was the check and balance, I could catch it before they injected me with something I shouldn't have.
And bringing that word back. So bravo to you for that, because we think we're in the hospital, right? We can just sit and lay back and everybody's going to take care of us. But we have to be alert too and say, what is that stuff that you know? I'm highly allergic to that. You can't give that stuff.
I mean, they're just people.
You know, so, you know, another good point. No, and they're coming in, you know, they're changing shifts, they're under pressure, and, you know, they're also human beings. So, you know, that, you know, I think that's another important point for our listeners is, you know, to be alert and just aware of what's going on around you.
Yeah, and strange things happen that, you know, catch you off guard. One day, I thought it was hilarious. I really was hilarious. I'd been in this one room for about a week, and then a new intake of a new patient came in, and his name was Dave Williams. And they put Dave Williams beside Dave Williams. And I thought that was hilarious. Wow, hi there. You know, you're my doppelganger. And he was laughing back and forth until lunch came, and the food was not my food. It was his food. And it struck me saying, wait a minute, if they can mix up my food tray, what else can they mix up? And I immediately called the charge nurse in and said, do you realize that this new intake is my same name and we've just mixed up our food? And it turned out that they, you know, knew that that was not an appropriate thing. And so they had to go ahead and do something about it quickly. And what they did was obviously move that other patient out of the room so that we wouldn't have any mix-ups. Could you imagine mix-up of medication? You know, I mean, it could have been horrendous.
Yeah, that's
but you wonder, how could that happen? I mean, they know who's going into the rooms, and it's, oh, put them together. You know, what? I mean, you'd think that there was a filtering process as they bring new patients in, that they take a look who's else in the room, and somebody would recognize that's not a good thing.
Well, Dave Williams, they probably just looked at the chart and thought they were seeing double or something to Dave. I mean, how crazy is that?
Bizarre. But that's why I come back to being an advocate. What can you recognize as happening around you to make a difference in your treatment program? And, you know, I've opened up the other seat if there's anybody out there who, you know, really feels comfortable in coming on camera and sharing their words of advice. Otherwise, Gina and I will just keep on sharing what we've learned, because we both have had extensive treatment programs with lots of surprises along the way that are just not always medically based.
Yeah, and you know, Dave, so talk about surprises. So I've had clients, and we've actually even had guests on the show, you know, who have woken up, women who've had surgery for either ovarian cancer, or I have a client who has a very rare appendix surgery, and waking up from surgery and, you know, finding out that, you know, one, you have cancer, and two, you know, you've had a complete hysterectomy. So you can either, you're not able to have any children, or, you know, you have one child, you know, and now you're not able to have any child. So add that onto the trauma of everything else that you're going through.
Well, it is. The whole system is overwhelming. There are just so many things you're trying to cope with. And that's why I like our Wednesday shows, because we're covering many, 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 many different kinds of topics about, you know, how to prepare and how to cope with with what cancer is bringing to your life. It's not just the medical side, which is what my basic understanding was when I came in for treatment. So, well, it'll all be taken care of. These are the experts. They're going to look after me on the medical side. I just didn't anticipate that there were systemic issues, infrastructure issues that would catch you off guard. And it depends on, you know, as I found, in which hospital I was in and which floor I was on. I mean, right down to, you know, repairs in the hospital going on. When I came out of the emergency and into a floor, they had put me on an old bed system that wasn't working. And so the bed wouldn't elevate, the lights wouldn't be able to be turned on and off from the panel on the side of the bed and so forth. I actually had to get my son to come in with his toolkit in order to fix it so that I could, have some kind of reasonable comfort, at least being able to turn off the lights, or turn them on. And you wouldn't expect to have to prepare for that. And yet that's, what you should be talking to your family and caregivers about, is what you're experiencing so that they can add the support. Because, if you mention it to your nursing staff, they say, well, yeah, we're saving money. We're moving to a new hospital. We can't do the renovation. We apologize that this is the condition, but that's the way it is. Well, then you could ask your family for help, as I did, and brought in, my son's toolkit so that he could, help me deal with that particular, issue. And it's these unknown things that you suddenly have to, be aware to somehow incorporate in your mind, that it's not just the medical issues that are going to surprise you. Hi, Pat. Good to see you today. Thanks for joining in.
Excuse me, I'm in my workout clothes still. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, Pat.
Yep.
Okay. No, I thought I'd chime in. I think there's so many things that you aren't told about this cancer process. I think that just if you look at the treatment process itself, you have no idea the different phases you go through. The early testing, the emotional aspects. Halfway through my first round of chemo, at least, I was thrilled to be halfway through. That was great. The tumors were shrinking. I was terrified. I was halfway through. Is this going to work? You have this range of contradictory emotions, and nobody talks to you about the emotional path. I think Nikki Barr, she does a very good job, I think, of capturing a lot of that in her book, and it's incredibly helpful. I think the other thing
on getting off the emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, Getting off the emotional roller coaster of cancer by Nikki Barr. And the other thing nobody talks to you about is how can you take charge of this process? Because it's very easy to all of a sudden just become a piece of meat that gets shuffled back and forth in the hospital, frankly. Nobody pays attention to your personal or emotional needs. It's not their job. But and there I would turn to, well, many things, but I look at the research. Certainly we have a lot on our site, but the research by David Servan-Shriver and Dean Ornish and people like that say we really can impact our health by paying attention to nutrition, exercise, stress management, social connection. These are real mainstream studies that show that this impacts the up and down regulation of over 500 genetic expressions. How you live and the choices you make truly matter. And I think the other thing I just throw into your discussion, nobody ever talks to you about the long-term effects. Livestrong on their site has an excellent app that they developed with the University of Pennsylvania's Abramson Cancer Center. And you can enter all the drugs that you've had in the course of your treatment, and they'll give you a printout of the possible side effects. Good morning. We should all have this. The potential side effects may not show up for a month or a year or 3 or 4 years, but they can be very substantial. And nobody in your medical team is going to be tracking this. It's up to you to be CEO of your own health. So if you can be aware of these after effects and be aware of things as they come up, you have a much better chance of being able to deal with it and make sense of it. And that is something that really nobody talks about. And some of the after effects, you look at Steffi, an after effect of a heart transplant, it's very real. For me, a hip surgery that didn't go very well has dramatically changed my life. There are so many, there's that, I think if you look at the cancer journey, there's the early part, the mid part, the ongoing part, because it never really ends. And those are the things that people don't tell you and that you really do need to hear. And you may not be ready to hear it all at once, but you will be ready at some point. And you'll remember back to somebody said, there's an app that can tell me about the after effects or whatever. And those are the points of information that you really need to empower yourself in this journey, because nobody else is going to be empowered for your health.
For sure.
Yeah, so important, Pat, and I'm glad you brought up the emotions because, initially the emotions come up and, then as we go along the journey, they still come up, or for some people, they don't come up because they're so focused on getting to their appointments and, going through all the processes that the emotions don't even come up until later on in the game. And it's, comes as a big shock and a surprise to the patient because it's like, oh my God, I didn't even express or experience any of this emotionally, although I went through the whole routine. What's going on now? some people even experience, you know,
That's
some
for sure.
PTSD.
And social, I think social media is so good for connecting people. And I would urge everybody, you don't have to come on a show like this, but get involved, get on Twitter, get on the websites that are out there, talk to people, be discriminating about the information you get. Because one of my pet peeves about these so-called support sites is they quickly degenerate to the lowest common denominator. Yeah. And that's not where you want to be. What you want to be, I believe, is very proactive. You want to figure out a way to create a path to health. And that is certainly something you can achieve, but you have to decide to educate yourself. I have a tweet that goes around periodically. It's one of my, it's nobody else's favorite, but I like this tweet. So if you see it, please favorite it for me, okay?
Okay.
But it's a tweet of Yoda from, you know, Star Wars, sitting there. And I have Yoda saying, to create an anti-cancer life, you must unlearn what you have learned. One of Yoda's favorite sayings.
That's right.
And it's so true. It's so true.
I think
you have
that's
to unlearn
great.
how we juggle all this stress. You have to learn to manage stress. You have to learn to be calm. You have to learn to revamp your priorities, really, because if cancer doesn't revamp your modern materialistic priorities, nothing will.
And for those who are watching the replay, we've got to introduce it, that wherever on the screen is Pat Wetzel for the Anti-Cancer Club. The little header will disappear on the replay, and you should be following the Anti-Cancer Club and attending Pat's Cancer Blab, All Things Cancer, on Sunday afternoons at 1 p.m. Pacific.
Thank you. Well, on our website, we have a list of things coming up. So if you're curious, please check it out.
The on tap section is listing it all out there. As I tweeted today, all of what's on tap won't fit in my mug. I need a Stein. I need something bigger.
I also wanted to thank you personally, Pat, for the recommendation on the book. And I think it's worth a mention because it does, you know, talk about your lifestyle, you know, changing your lifestyle, anti-cancer.
By David Servan Schreiber. Yeah, and actually the club was named partly in homage to him. It's called Anti-Cancer, A New Way of Life. It's available on Amazon. We should have it on our site, but our product section is a little lean right now. But it's a fantastic book. It's written by a neuroscientist at the University of Pittsburgh. He's a hot, rising young academic doctor who is running a brain imaging experiment. And his subject doesn't show up one night. So he goes through, I think it was an MRI, and he finds he has a brain tumor. Oh my God. So he tells the whole story. His life falls totally apart. He can't work. He's sick. His marriage falls apart. He gets through all this. And at the end, he says to his doctor, "What should I do?" And the doctor said, "Go back to your life." So he goes back to this hectic, stressed life where he eats poorly, never sleeps as a young surgeon. And of course, the cancer comes back. And at that point, he goes on a worldwide quest for what creates anti-cancer health. And it's really a seminal book in terms of, I think, shifting people's perspectives to see the science of health as opposed to the intervention of disease.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I love so much about that book, was his vulnerability to say how when he got cancer, he became a patient and he wasn't a doctor anymore. And he saw the other side of, you know, the realm of, you know, what people go through. And I just think that book, you know, so again, I wanted to thank you for that, because I think it's, you know, a great switch of perspective there, you know, for somebody who really went through it. He was a doctor and he became a patient, and now, you know, he's not only sharing the medical, but he's sharing the whole picture of how you create well-being, not only medically, but in changing your lifestyle.
And I'm such a nerd. I actually think that one of the best parts of his book are the footnotes. The footnotes are amazing. They're really great. And they have lots of good, they'll take you in lots of good directions in terms of investigating what works for you.
Well, there is so much to know, isn't there? I mean, you're on a constant research. Regardless of the physicians who tell you stay off the internet, there's a lot of good information you can pick up.
Be smart, but get on the internet. There is so much that lies outside of medicine, so much patient experience, so much information about health. You certainly do have to be discriminating. The asparagus diet, I hate to clue you, will not cure your cancer. But if you're desperate enough and you're scared, you're going to read that and think, I'm going to eat lots of asparagus. Well, you know, there are pros and cons to that. There was a study done recently that's showing that eating too much kale isn't good for you. So
hey, all for that. Yeah.
no, my Kill Caesar for lunch was excellent. But, I think you have to have some common sense, certainly. But I think that you absolutely should do research, get online, go to PubMed, read about all the clinical trials that are happening. You're going to find out who the thought leaders are in your type of disease. That may guide what doctors and institutions you go to. That's on the web. If you have a blood cancer, subscribe to the Blood Magazine. It's a place where you're, again, going to see all the top researchers, and you're going to become educated about what's going on in terms of your disease. And I think that anybody who tells you not to get on the web is saying that out of fear. And my question would be, what are you afraid of, or what are you intimidated by?
Yeah. And look who just joined us. Scott Silverstein, a very close friend, has come in. Hi, Scott.
How are y'all?
We're well.
Look, at my plug is this.
Matcha? There it is.
I'm drinking green tea right now.
Matcha tea.
Yeah.
This is it. And I'm going to start cutting up asparagus as soon. That's my meal tonight.
Matcha asparagus. That's a combo.
Just asparagus.
I
love this.
I wanted to pop in. I'm going to roll, okay, because my phone is ringing in the background.
Okay, thanks for coming in.
Hey, thank you, guys. Great
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Pat.
So how are you folks doing?
We're having fun today trying to talk about the surprises that caught us off guard during our treatment program. Non-medical things, simple things that happened that were really not expected, but we had to deal with. It's been a good discussion so far. Any surprises happened to you along the way? Things that you weren't prepared to deal with?
Not really. It was so new to me. I was in such bewilderment that going through it, now that you're on the other end of it, I guess what I want to say is that it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It wasn't.
That's a good surprise.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about, a prostatectomy with a 6-inch cut in your stomach, it just doesn't. And then when I remember one of the first things I did when I woke up, I looked at the stitches. I said, holy shit.
That's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
Well, that's good. That's good advice for people, because we do have a lot of things going through our head that are more negative than positive. So folks who are watching and on the replay know that perhaps it's not going to be as bad as you're thinking.
Yeah, what you're thinking has nothing to do with what it's going to be like.
Yep.
And I think that's an important point, Scott, because, that a lot of fear comes up, and, we managed to get through this and come out the other side. Right. So it is kind of a lot of stories, that we create for ourselves, and we don't realize how short.
Were you watching or participating in that tweet chat today on life after diagnosis, how people were talking about what they did with their lives and how they looked at it? A lot of people were not looking at this as a negative. They were saying it's a positive. There are lots of good things going to happen to them as a result of this fight or journey with cancer. It was a very interesting discussion.
Yeah, you either have to be in the possibility of it or be in despair. Take your choice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the other things that were bothering me in retrospect, looking at, and I was with we were talking about riding to the clinic with other people, and I was talking to someone who had also been in the same hospital as I had a few years ago, and we were both laughing that in the emergency recovery area, they had no heat, and it was, we were there in March, and snow outside, and the HVAC wasn't working, and we were prepared for it, and we were freezing our butts off, and they were keep bringing in lots of hot blankets, and the nurses on the night shift were wearing earmuffs and gloves to do their work. You would expect that hospitals would figure that people in the emergency area should get heat, but that was not what actually happened. And we were both in there. I was there for two and a half weeks. He was there for 2 weeks. And for that period of time, everybody was suffering because of HVAC not being directed properly. There are some real surprises at times that you can face.
Yeah. So, Gene, I never realized that you were also a coach. But you're not into the weight loss thing.
No. Life coach.
No, I'm a survivorship coach. Have you been listening, Scott?
But isn't weight loss part of survivorship?
I'm not a nutritionist or anything like that. Sure. It's about your overall well-being.
I came to the conclusion I'm not coachable, so it's hopeless. I'm never.
And there are people
never
who are
lose
not
weight.
coachable. They need other modalities.
Just get used to it.
I think you have me confused with Haley.
But I gave her an excuse that I was going to Florida, which I am. And I am going to Florida. I might leave tomorrow.
Excellent.
And that's what us coaches do. We figure out what the excuses are.
Well, I have no
willpower.
Then you need a coach to be your cheerleader.
No willpower whatsoever. I mean, I can go for a few days, but something will get in. Like this. Let me just get. I buy some rice pudding. Now it was almond milk, so it wasn't dairy. So I'm happy. It's vegan. All right. I don't need rice pudding.
Do you like rice pudding?
I love rice pudding.
Well, then you should have some rice pudding.
Has lots of sugar, a little bit of protein, but it's that sweet stuff that I don't need. And then my son comes home from college, and he brings a bag of sweet cucumbers. These things were just cucumbers, little ones.
Right.
Boy, they're great snacks. And I'm thinking, should I be eating those or should I be sucking down the rice pudding,
Well, you've got to get yourself a health coach who can help you with these issues. That's right. But hey, we're at the top of the hour, so thanks very much for coming in, Scott. You're
gonna end another one of these fine shows before.
Yep. At 3:00, or 4:00, we're closing up. So,
who sponsored you this week?
Who sponsored us this week? CanSurround is my big word. People should be looking at cansurround.com. They're a really new service that help people with the psychosocial issues dealing with coping with cancer. A really nice new group coming on the market.
Let me say this to all your visitors and all your folks that will be watching this replay.
Please?
It's never what you think it's going to be. Your thinking has nothing to do with this. What shows up will totally surprise you.
That's for sure.
So enjoy the trip.
Hey, that's right. Like that.
See you later.
Thanks for coming in, Scott. Appreciate it.
Bye, Gina.
In fact, that's a really good comment because often I cope with the journey by thinking I was on a Walt Disney ride because it was always enjoyable, but it had ups and downs and scary moments. But when it was over, and I'm thinking of Splash Mountain as I'm speaking right now, it was such a sweet ride until you went over the cliff. But I loved it so much, even though I was scared, I went back on again. So, you know, you may think that the journey you're walking with cancer is up and down. It's a roller coaster, and that's why Nikki Barr will be our guest coming up in the end of March. So looking forward to having her on board, talking about how to get off that emotional roller coaster, because life has a lot of surprises. So what do you think, Gina? What do you think about our show today?
I think it was just awesome. I think we stayed on track, and I think it was pretty good for just the two of us. And then, you know, Pat and Scott definitely added some.
I think we had a good time and shared a lot of good information. And thank everybody who was here today, and those of you who are watching us on the replay. We come back every Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern, and Gina and I will be there to try and see, I told you, there's a surprise. Hey, folks, a new surprise. We just changed our date. It's every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Gina and I will be here to help you along the path, dealing with all the issues that you're going to face from the beginning of diagnosis to the state of wellness and vitality. So thank you ever so much. Really appreciate you all coming, and look forward to seeing you next week.
Bye.